The moment he swore to tell the truth, the whole glittering illusion started to crack. He walked into that London courtroom like a man on a mission, shoulders squared, jaw tight, carrying years of rage against the press like armor. This was supposed to be his reckoning, the day he'd finally cornered the tabloids that haunted his youth, stalked his relationships, and, in his telling, poisoned his life. Instead, the room slowly transformed into something far more brutal, a spotlight, hot and unforgiving, aimed straight at him. At first, it looked like another chapter in his long war. Lawyers in sharp suits, thick folders, that quiet, tense rustle of paper that means someone's about to be exposed. He spoke about paranoia, about feeling hunted, about never knowing who to trust. The story was familiar, polished from years of interviews and documentaries. But courtrooms don't run on feelings. They run on receipts. And the receipts started talking. The bombshell didn't come from a snarling tabloid editor or some shady private investigator. It came from people who once sat at his table. People who knew his routines, his moods, his secrets. Former friends, former aides. The kind of names that used to be saved in his phone under nicknames, not titles. Their words entered calmly into evidence, sliced through the narrative he had built brick by brick. For years, there had been whispers that he used a cheeky alias to communicate quietly with journalists. Mr. Mischief, a playful name, a harmless little disguise. When it was put to him under oath, he shut it down flat. No hesitation, no wiggle room. Not true, he said. Absolutely not. Then the defense pulled out messages. Private communications. Notes from his own inner circle referencing that exact nickname in connection with him reaching out to members of the press. Not gossip, not rumor. Documents from people who had once been on his side of the palace gates. You could almost feel the air change, because this wasn't just about a pseudonym, it was about the picture he'd painted for the world. A prince relentlessly pursued, cornered, victimized at every turn. But now another image was emerging. Someone who at times played the same media game he publicly condemned. Someone who wasn't just chased by the machine, but occasionally stepped into it, mask on, name changed, ready to steer the story. The judge didn't explode, he didn't need to. A raised eyebrow, a careful note, a measured reminder to answer the question. In a courtroom, disappointment is louder than shouting. As the hours dragged on, the frustration started leaking through. He tried to zoom out, to talk about the system, the culture, the cruelty of it all. He wanted the court to feel the years of pressure, the cameras, the headlines, the girlfriends hounded until relationships cracked. But each time he drifted into the big emotional picture, he was gently but firmly pulled back. Just answer the question. This article. This date. This phone call. Details became landmines. He spoke movingly about the women from his past, about the toll the media took on them, the guilt he carried, the fear that history would repeat itself. The pain in those memories sounded raw, lived in, real. But when the focus shifted to his current wife, the tone felt different, shorter, tighter, almost like he was racing past something too complicated to sit with. Observers noticed. Observers always notice. Then came the clash of worlds. He spoke like someone still fighting a moral battle, trying to prove a point about right and wrong, about human decency versus corporate greed. The court, meanwhile, kept asking, can you prove this specific story was obtained illegally? Do you have evidence this voicemail was hacked? When exactly did you learn this information? He wanted acknowledgement. The law wanted timestamps. At one point, after a tense back and forth, his voice faltered. He said it was disgusting to hear the defense suggest he had no right to privacy. His throat tightened. He stared ahead, blinking hard, as if willing himself not to crumble under the weight of reliving it all. It was a deeply human moment, but also a dangerous one. Because emotion can win sympathy, but it can't fill in missing proof. Legal analysts watching from the sidelines didn't sugarcoat it. Credibility is everything in a case like this, they murmured. And credibility had just taken a hit, not from enemies, but from his own past. Evidence suggesting he sometimes engaged with the press in secret gave the defense a powerful line. Maybe he wasn't only a victim. Maybe he was also, at times, a participant. That single shift changes everything. Because his entire public identity in recent years has rested on a simple, powerful story. Hunted prince, cruel press, desperate escape. It's a narrative that earned him global sympathy, massive interviews, and a new life far from palace walls. But under cross-examination, simple stories grow thorns. Contradictions matter, timelines matter, who said what and when suddenly matters more than how it all felt. By the end of the day, he didn't look like a triumphant warrior taking on the system. He looked tired, cornered. like a man realizing that the battlefield he chose has rules that don't bend for trauma, titles, or even truth as he personally experiences it. In that witness box, he wasn't a prince. He was just a claimant, and every answer opened the door to another uncomfortable question. The case isn't over, not officially, but something shifted in that courtroom. The moral high ground he walked in with now looks steeper, rockier, harder to defend. And the most painful twist of all? The cracks didn't appear because of strangers with cameras. They appeared because people who once stood close enough to hear his unfiltered voice were now helping the court hear it too. By the time the next round of questioning began, the fairy tale had fully morphed into a legal thriller, and not the kind where the hero makes a last-minute comeback. This was the slow, suffocating kind, where every word you've ever said comes back, wearing a suit and carrying paperwork. He returned to the stand looking like someone who hadn't slept, jaw tighter, eyes sharper, as if sheer willpower could bend the day back in his favor. But the courtroom had found its rhythm now, and it wasn't dancing to emotion, it was marching to evidence. The judge's patience, once gently stretched, had turned visibly thin. Not cruel, not dramatic. Just firm in that devastatingly polite way that says, "This is not your stage, this is my courtroom." Every time he tried to zoom out into a grand speech about press cruelty or institutional failure, he was steered back like a car drifting off lane. We are dealing with this article, this date, this claim. It was the legal version of stay on topic, and it hit harder every time. Then came the diary entries. Yes, his own notes, his own records. Written at the time, when memories were fresh and motives weren't yet polished for global audiences. The defense began lining them up against his current recollections, side by side, like a before and after of the same story. Small differences at first, a date slightly off, a reaction described differently, then bigger gaps. Moments he now framed as shocking violations that, back then, he had apparently recorded in a far more ordinary tone. He tried to explain it away: stress, trauma, the fog of living under constant surveillance. But the defense didn't argue with his feelings. They just kept returning to the same brutal point. These were your words, written then. These are your words, spoken now. Which version is the court supposed to trust? That question hung in the air like smoke. And then the strategy shifted to something even more dangerous: agency. For years, his story has centered on being trapped, targeted, stripped of control. But witness statements from former staff revealed a more complicated picture. One where his team sometimes fed misleading tidbits to the press to flesh out leaks, changed numbers frequently, and managed media relationships with calculated caution. Survival tactics, he insisted. Necessary defenses in a hostile environment. But the defense leaned in on the distinction. Survival still involves action. Reaction is still participation. You weren't just a bystander in this ecosystem, they suggested. You were a player, even if you hated the game. That idea is dynamite in a privacy case. Because if you're engaging, even defensively, it muddies the clean line between pure victim and active participant. The more complex the relationship with the press appears, the harder it becomes to argue you were simply prey with no influence, no strategy, no involvement. He bristled at that. You could see it in the clipped answers, the way he gripped the sides of the witness box, the flashes of irritation when questions felt unfair or reductive. But irritation doesn't erase contradictions. If anything, it highlights them. Observers in the gallery started whispering less about the tabloids and more about him, not his past, his performance. The way he seemed genuinely shocked that his lived experience wasn't being accepted as self-evident proof. The way he pushed back on the structure of the questioning itself, as if the courtroom should adjust to the weight of his story rather than the other way around. At one point, after another careful judicial reminder to answer concisely, he began a sentence with, "As I've been trying to explain," only to be gently cut off. "The court has heard your explanation. Please answer the question put to you." That line landed like a door quietly closing, because beneath all the legal technicalities, something bigger was playing out, a prince discovering that, in this arena, rank means nothing. There's no deference clause, no trauma exception, no royal shortcut around the burden of proof. And that realization looked like it hurt. The emotional cracks widened as the day wore on. His voice, once fiery, dipped into something more brittle. The anger was still there, but now it was tangled with something else. Disbelief, maybe, that the system he chose to fight in wasn't validating his narrative the way the public stage often had. Legal experts watching closely began to say what many were already thinking: even if some of his claims are true, the presentation is faltering. Courts don't rule on vibes, they rule on evidence, consistency, and credibility. And right now, credibility was wobbling. The most brutal irony of all? This was meant to be the place where he finally seized control of the story. No palace handlers, no tabloid spin. Just him, his truth, and the law. But the law doesn't tell stories, it dissects them, pulls them apart, tests each piece under a microscope. By the time he stepped down again, the image was stark. Not a triumphant figure standing up to a corrupt machine, but a man caught between two worlds. The emotional truth he lives with every day, and the cold factual standard a courtroom demands. In that gap, his certainty seemed to flicker. The friends who once laughed with him had become footnotes in legal bundles. His private coping strategies were now public exhibits. His memory, once the backbone of his narrative, was being weighed against emails, notes, and timelines that didn't always line up. The very history he brought to prove his case was now being used to question it. The trial moves on. There will be more arguments, more legal wrangling, more headlines. But something fundamental has already shifted. The myth of the untouchable narrative, the idea that his version of events would glide through unquestioned, has been shattered under oath. In the end, the most explosive part of this drama wasn't a secret tape or a hidden camera. It was the simple, ruthless demand of the courtroom: prove it. And as the dust settles on these days of testimony, one thing is painfully clear. This isn't just a fight against the press anymore. It's a fight to hold his own story together under the